My wife is crying in our driveway, clutching a plastic tub filled with our underwear, while a stranger in a blazer is changing the locks on my front door. A bright yellow flyer screams, "Eviction, HOA action," and flaps in the breeze like some kind of smug bird. The woman with the blazer looks up at me and says coldly, "This is private property now." Behind her, my sprinkler system kicks on in what feels like the most sarcastic timing possible. I can see our furniture stacked haphazardly on the lawn, our daughter's stuffed animals scattered across the grass like casualties. My toolbox sits open in the flower bed, wrenches glinting in the afternoon sun. Then I hear the rumble. 3 matte green trucks roll into the cul-de-sac like they're leading a parade. 12 Marines hop out, start setting up traffic cones with military precision, and suddenly the entire neighborhood goes dead silent except for my wife sobbing and one wind chime that seems to regret every life choice that brought it to this moment. I'm Nolan Price. I own a 2-story house on Maple Key Court in Hawthorne Crest, a subdivision where people treat their hydrangeas like weapons of war and measure grass height with rulers. I work as a logistics contractor, former Marine, married to Tessa, and we have a toddler who thinks doorstops make excellent musical instruments. I was away on a 3-day job in Boise when Beverly Klein, the HOA president with helmet hair, pearls at 7 in the morning, and a voice like she's reading a legal document to a muffin, decided we were in what she called material non-compliance. Our supposed crimes. A security camera that she called non-conforming, even though it just pointed at our own driveway and couldn't see anything beyond our property line. My pickup truck, which she labeled a commercial vehicle, even though it's just a regular pickup I use to haul supplies for work, no company logos or anything. And the worst offense of all, an unauthorized door color. Our door was eggshell. She wanted something called Summer Cloud, which as far as I could tell was also eggshell but cost $40 more per gallon. While I was gone, Beverly treated the community covenants and restrictions like they were a treasure map and declared our home reclaimed for the association. She actually used those words in the notice. It started weeks earlier with daily fines printed in 14-point font that practically screamed anger off the page. $50 for the camera. $75 for the truck. $100 for the door. The notices appeared in our mailbox like clockwork, each one more aggressive than the last. Then Beverly decided to escalate things. She posted an immediate vacate notice on our door that had no court case number on it anywhere, just her signature and the HOA seal she'd apparently made at an office supply store. She told Tessa that the HOA had something called summary authority to just take our house. She said it with such confidence that Tessa actually looked it up, thinking maybe she'd missed something. When Tessa refused to leave our own home, Beverly called what she described as a compliance contractor. This person showed up with moving boxes and latex gloves like they were moving into a crime scene. They started putting our belongings on the front lawn without any care or organization. They unplugged our refrigerator and left the door wide open. They actually moved our daughter's crib outside and left it on the damp grass. Tessa called me from the sidewalk, completely hysterical, while our toddler clapped at the chaos like she thought it was some kind of entertaining television show. Beverly stood there with her arms folded, telling the neighbors who had gathered that this was a teachable moment about maintaining standards, and that the community's values must be protected. I immediately called the county office. The woman who answered listened to my explanation and said flatly, "That's not how evictions work in this state. She's going to get herself arrested." I called a locksmith to come change the locks back. He told me nervously, "I'll need to wait for law enforcement to be present. I'm not getting involved in whatever this is." Then I called my buddy Ruiz, who's still active duty at the reserve center in town. He said cheerfully, "We were literally loading trucks for a charity build. You need hands." I told him the situation. There was a long pause, then he said, "Oh, this lady has no idea what she just started. We'll be there in 20. By the time I landed and drove home as fast as legally possible, Beverly had doubled down on her power trip. There were new locks on my door, professional-grade deadbolts that must have cost $300. There was a laminated placard that read, "HOA possession," zip-tied to my doorknob like a trophy. She'd even posted a notice in the community newsletter about enforcement action on Maple Key Court, as an example to others. My Marines arrived right behind me in perfect convoy formation. Ruiz, Tran, Mendoza, and a small platoon of grinning carpenters with immaculate military haircuts poured out of those trucks. Not a single weapon in sight, just tool belts, body cameras, and the unshakable calm of people who've moved 1,000 awkward couches under pressure. They assessed the situation with the kind of efficiency you only get from years of training. 2 sheriff's cruisers pulled up because someone, obviously Beverly, had called about what she described as military intimidation and a hostile armed presence. The deputies looked at Beverly's flyer, looked at my property deed that I'd pulled up on my phone, then looked at Beverly the way you look at a cat that just tried to issue a parking ticket. One deputy said slowly, "Ma'am, only a court of law can evict someone. You cannot perform self-help lockouts. This is illegal." Beverly tried her magic words. She said with complete confidence, "I am the association. I have authority under the covenants." The deputy replied without missing a beat, "I am the law. And the law says you're committing a crime right now." Under deputy supervision, the locksmith popped my door open in 30 seconds flat. The new locks she'd installed were sitting in a pile on my porch within minutes. Ruiz had the Marines set up a neat sorting line with clean tarps and labeled bins. Everything was being filmed on multiple body cameras. Tran documented the zip ties on my appliances and the disgusting sludge from our unplugged refrigerator like he was preserving evidence for a federal trial, taking measurements and noting timestamps. Mendoza gently carried the crib back inside while a deputy narrated into his body camera, restoring lawful possession to the property owner, Nolan Price, at 2:47 p.m. Beverly kept trying to wedge her clipboard between us and reality, citing section numbers and page references that nobody cared about. Then the real boomerang hit. The county code officer arrived, apparently called by one of the deputies who knew this was about to get interesting. He flipped through the community covenants and restrictions, the actual filed version from the county recorder's office, and pointed to the clause Beverly apparently never bothered to read. The one that says the HOA may not interfere with the quiet enjoyment or possession of a dwelling without a court order. It's literally Section 3, Paragraph 2. Also, that commercial vehicle clause specifically excludes personal vehicles used for employment purposes, which describes my truck exactly. And about those door colors? Eggshell is literally listed on the approved color sheet on page 6, right next to Summer Cloud. The code officer held up both pages side by side. They were the same color. Beverly had been citing the 2009 draft of the rules, not the actual ratified version from 2012 that everyone was supposed to be following. The sheriff served Beverly with on-the-spot citations for illegal lockout, criminal mischief for those cut camera wires, and filing a false report about the Marines. Her so-called compliance contractor sprinted to his van and peeled out, leaving an invoice for $850 flapping on my hydrangea bush. The deputies asked Beverly very calmly for the board vote authorizing any of her actions. She produced an email. An email she had sent to herself at 9:15 the previous evening with the subject line, Emergency Authorization. There was no other board member copied. There was no vote. There was just Beverly deciding that she had the power. Ruiz quietly asked if we could finish the charity build after we finished reassembling my living room. The deputy actually said, "Please do," and offered to help carry the couch. One of the younger Marines recorded a video of a sheriff's deputy helping move furniture back into a house after an illegal eviction attempt, and I knew that was going to make the rounds at every base in the country. Neighbors started coming forward with doorbell camera footage of Beverly coaching the contractor, telling him to move the crib because optics matter, and make sure it looks official. One neighbor had audio of Beverly saying, "They'll leave once they see we're serious. Nobody fights the HOA." The HOA insurance representative, who had been frantically called by a board member who finally woke up to the nightmare, arrived looking like he was tasting pennies. He informed Beverly in a tight voice that her actions were completely outside insurance coverage and would likely trigger a premium increase that he described as visible from space. He actually said the carrier might drop the entire community. We finished resetting the house in perfect formation. The Marines did a final sweep like it was a homecoming operation. Crib secured, refrigerator replugged and restocked with food that neighbors brought over, pantry restocked, toddler reunited with her beloved doorstop. Ruiz hung a small wooden plaque he had carved in the shop truck that read, "Semper Home." My wife laughed for the first time all day and then immediately started ugly crying anyway. The neighbors in the cul-de-sac actually started clapping. One older gentleman who'd been fined for his mailbox being 2 inches too tall shook my hand and said, "Thank you." Beverly attempted to make a speech about maintaining order and setting precedents. The deputy read her Miranda rights instead, and the clapping got louder. The emergency HOA meeting happened 3 days later in the community clubhouse. Every single homeowner showed up, which had never happened before. Beverly was removed as president by unanimous vote of the actual board members, who were horrified by what she'd done. She was barred from serving on the board for 5 years and stripped of all enforcement privileges permanently. The county prosecutor filed criminal charges for unlawful eviction, criminal mischief, and filing a false police report. Each charge carried potential jail time. The judge imposed a restraining order keeping Beverly 200 feet away from my property and specifically from our doorknobs, which got a laugh in the courtroom. Civil court awarded us $23,000 in damages, attorney's fees, and the full cost of replacing all the food she let spoil in our unplugged refrigerator. The order required the HOA to fund a mandatory Know the Law seminar for all officers, and the first slide of that presentation was a photo of Beverly's zip tie on my doorknob. Beverly was hit with a special assessment bill of $12,000 for the insurance claim, payable personally since she had authorized everything by emailing herself. When the judge read the sentence and the fine amount, Beverly's face went white as paper and she whispered, "But I was protecting property values." The judge replied, "You were breaking the law, Miss Klein. Protecting property values does not give you the right to commit crimes." And that was that.